When a young boy in Norway began to believe that his own body parts didn't belong to him, he started to act on the desire to get rid of them from a young age. This would spiral into a life where he would make a financially lucrative enterprise on the seedier side of the internet by doing that very same thing to other people. What do you think would happen if everyone on Earth decided to destroy all their vapes in a moment of rebellious rage? They would all most likely have a hard time not coming back to it. When it comes to kicking bad habits, the sponsor of today's video, Fume, is the perfect solution. Sometimes people get so stuck in their bad habits that they don't even realize that they're doing it anymore. It could be because of social pressure, or because they're stressed out, or maybe because they're just bored. We've all been there at some point, and that's where Fume comes in. Fume isn't a vape or an e-cigarette or even something that contains nicotine at all. It's something very different. It's a very simple way to replace some of your bad habits without inhaling anything harmful in the process. There's no smoke, no vapor, and above all, no nicotine. It's just naturally flavored air coming from these little cores. Fume doesn't require any batteries or charging. You just pick it up and it's ready to use. And hey, since it's nicotine-free and doesn't actually produce any vapor or smoke, you can use it wherever you like. It gives you something to hold in your hand. I'm sure a lot of you out there have that urge to fidget with something in your hand at all times, so it works for that too. It makes these little snaps and clicks when you mess with the airflow dial that make it feel like one of those fidget toys. When it comes to flavors, my favorite is definitely crisp mint. It has that kind of cooling feeling along with the good taste that comes with mint. Over 500,000 people have already added Fume to their daily routine, and I can see why. It's simple, it's satisfying, and it doesn't come with any of the downsides that come with smoking or vaping. And right now, if you order the Journey Pack using my code DIRETRIP, you'll get one of these cool little Fume toppers, a nice little accessory to make your experience even better. So if you've been thinking of changing up your habits, this is the perfect first step. Go to tryfume.com/DireTrip or scan the QR code on screen to get yours today. Thank you to Fume for sponsoring this video, and now let's get back to the content. This is a story that is hands down one of the most disgusting I've ever covered. If you're eating right now, you probably shouldn't be. That is, unless you actually find the idea of nuts in your salad to be appetizing, as that is something that comes up. Before I go and spoil all of it, let's start from the beginning. Marius Gustavsson was from a fairly small town southwest of Oslo in Norway. From a very young age, it was noticed that he had some issues. He often fantasized about not having one of his legs. He would often bend his leg under him as he sat down and put a stocking over it so that it would look like it wasn't there. These were likely symptoms of a disorder known as body integrity identity disorder, a rare mental health problem long before the disorder was actually first documented. Those who have had this problem usually feel that one of their limbs or body parts shouldn't be there, leading to discomfort. Others may fully believe that they should be disabled and seek ways to make that happen. Once he hit puberty, Marius's discomfort with his own legs began to take a backseat to his new focus, his penis. He had a desire to get rid of it, once actually going through with a method to do so. He took a hammer and slammed it down upon his junk. When that wasn't enough, he boiled a pot of water and poured it all over his crotch as well. It's unknown what kind of injury this left him with, but it likely wasn't good. Once he grew into adulthood, Marius actually came to be a quite respected member of his community. While working as a mailman, he also worked in an LGBT charity that was known for organizing Pride weekends as well as other celebrations, like what they call Rust celebrations, some events that high school students take part in before finals. However, it wasn't long at all before Marius started running into trouble. In 1999, he ended up getting himself a suspended prison sentence after committing fraud against a housing cooperative. Then in 2001, he got an actual sentence of 8 months in prison for what was only called internet fraud. He got married in 2005, which helped keep him on track, but that all came to an end in 2016. Once his marriage came to an end, Marius began to spiral. It was shortly after the divorce that he began to modify his body through various means, and these modifications were really to such the extent that they were referred to as mutilations by a lot of people. These mutilations against his own body gave him a sense of power and made him a little bit more content with his own body and his situation in life. Looking for a change, Marius moved out to the UK to start fresh. By 2017, he had moved out to London, and that's where his life would truly take a turn for the bizarre. He began dating a boy named Jacob Crimmy Appleby, a 16-year-old boy who was 23 years younger than him. Both of them believed that they were stuck in bodies that they were uncomfortable with, surprised to see that others felt the same. Marius started a website, one that he would call Eunuch Maker, in 2018. At first, the website was somewhat of a blog, with a paid section where you could make an account and read the posts in full. Eventually, Marius came to meet up with many other like-minded individuals, like Damian Burns, a male prostitute, Peter Waits, a 67-year-old retired former member of the Royal Society of Chemists, and David Caruthers, a 61-year-old retired hospital worker. After a while, the website began to start operating in a much different way. This was when the group decided to start performing these sorts of operations/mutilations on other people. Getting in on the action, Marius even began to perform the same sort of gruesome operations on himself, or at least he ordered the other members of the group to do it. One of the first things that he wanted to do was get rid of the leg that he had always hated since childhood. He got his young boyfriend, Jacob, to freeze his leg on dry ice for 2 hours, leading to it needing to be amputated at the hospital. Despite having done this to himself, he ended up getting on disability while in the UK, taking out over £18,000 in benefits. Sometime after, Marius got another one of his cohorts, Damian Burns, to remove his male member with a vegetable knife. Recording it for his website, Marius got down on all fours on the ground and pretended to beg for help, hamming it up for the cameras. Damian then removed his bits, held them up for the camera, and then flopped them down onto Marius' stomach. Damian then told him that the wound that resulted didn't look very good. Marius ended up in the hospital afterwards due to complications resulting from the butchering. Undeterred, he came right back home to engage in more of the same. He later had a 48-year-old nurse named Nathan Arnold cut off one of his nipples with a scalpel. Realizing how lucrative of a market there actually was for this sort of thing, the group began to expand towards operating on others even more. Marius was described as somewhat of a master manipulator, usually targeting potential targets who were much younger and in vulnerable positions with prominent mental health issues. Throughout multiple London apartments and hotels, they began to perform operation after operation on these willing participants. Some of the members of the Eunuch Maker group were now as young as 16, working completely as volunteers. Meanwhile, the website itself began booming in popularity. Given the type of content that it was, Marius and the others were left to pay for the hosting and for the bandwidth that they were using. It all became a bit hard for Marius to manage, leading to him speaking to one of the administrators of the website, someone who was merely a fan at first. This man was an IT worker who has only been labeled as Andrew in the media. Andrew later said, "I first got involved because Marius was having trouble scaling the site due to the sheer number of visitors to it. The servers were literally struggling to cope. We're talking a site that has 300,000 visitors a week, 10,000 to 20,000 active daily users. When we look at the Google Analytics for it, the only country that has never visited it was North Korea. This is a global thing." The group came to have 22,000 active paying subscribers. The website had multiple different tiers that you could subscribe to, normal, premium, and VIP. Some of these subscriptions would go for about £100 a year, with the lowest offered on discount at about £35. That means if we're putting it somewhere in the middle and saying that the average sub was about £50, they would have been making £1,100,000 in the best year. That's roughly about $1.5 million US. Still, it has been claimed that he only made about £300,000 from the website by many sources. It's possible that he divided up the rest between his co-workers. Those who worked with him said that he actually lived a less than modest life, maybe due to spending habits, often having to beg his mom to help him pay rent. While you might assume that this was something from the dark web, it was something that you could actually pretty easily access from the regular internet. Granted, anything beyond a paywall is technically deep web, but it was still fairly easy to access. It was thanks to the group's encryption, VPNs, and anonymity that they were able to operate, pun intended, out in the open. Not only that, but many of their subjects that they performed these operations on didn't want their identity leaked to the public either, leading to nobody coming forward for the longest time. The website came to advertise both its services and the videos of them. It has been reported that potential amputees would receive a portion of the revenue that their own video generated as well. Many of these people were left with no choice but to let Mariam perform the operations they desired, as no legitimate doctor would ever amputate their limbs or genitals for no reason. You might assume that a lot of these surgeries would involve gender reassignment, but that actually wasn't the case most of the time. They were more about making these people into what are called nullos, an online term that refers to genital nullification. Many of them were men who didn't want to have a gender at all, and instead preferred to be, in Marius's own words, smooth like a Ken doll. As a result, a good majority of the content on the website came to feature young men, sometimes teenagers, having their male parts removed on livestream. A good majority of the operations that Marius carried out himself were performed on his own bed in his apartment on some regular bedding. They were strapped down to the bed by their wrists and ankles. He had a good number of tools at his disposal, like forceps, electrodes, catheters, scalpels, and clamps. These clamps were typically the kind that you would use when neutering livestock. While it was promised that the location and the tools were sterile, that was anything but the case. It's believed that they did very little to clean any of the material or tools involved beyond some basic washing, if even that. Andrew, the IT worker, came to have one of those operations himself in July of 2020. He said that, while the apartment seemed clean and normal to him, noticing a nice painting above the bed, he was a bit thrown off by the walls being completely covered in pornography. Marius, who had been going by Theo, had a sign hanging on his bedroom door that read, "Theo's Playroom, open 24 hours, 7 days." In this room, rigged with cameras all over the place, Marius would come to perform an operation on Andrew. This was described as a sub-incision procedure on his member. Like the other people who had had these operations, Andrew had his operation done for free, with Marius making his money by streaming and posting the video. Andrew said it appeared everything was being sterilized after, saying that the aftercare was pretty good. He said that he was sent home with antibiotics and some other materials. It was evident that Marius had been through this many times by this point, with Andrew noting that he seemed very confident in what he was doing. It would soon become clear that this confidence was unwarranted. Andrew ended up being sent to the hospital with a slew of complications related to the operation. He said that this was a fairly common occurrence, and he knew it, with many people having been sent to the hospital for uncontrolled bleeding after the fact in the past. When that happened, Marius and his crew would usually drive them out to the hospital, let the NHS clean up his mistakes, and drive away without being seen. By this time, Marius had been involved in a bare minimum of over 30 different operations, although it isn't possible to know the true number at this point. Marius later claimed that he had developed an addiction that took over him. Even when he wasn't the one performing these procedures, he still couldn't keep himself from hopping in and watching all of the others, fussing over the quality of the videos. All throughout this time, Marius kept up appearances to a certain degree while in public. He still regularly attended different Pride events throughout London, even working for some of them and helping set up their parades. With this newfound confidence in the fact that they hadn't even come close to being caught, the group only grew more bold, more careless, and more dangerous with what they were doing. For one live stream, Marius and a new patient played a game of dice in order to determine which person had which body parts removed. When that patient lost the supposedly staged game, Marius chopped off his member with the very same knife that he had used to remove his own. He then told the man that the result of the operation looked awesome. Just as in the last procedure, this one also ended in severe complications, leading to the man going to the hospital and claiming that he was in an accident. Not content to keep his antics at this already high level of grotesque, Marius continued to up the ante. He, and reportedly some of the others in the group, took a keen interest in cannibalism. He began to keep a stock of removed body parts in his fridge, most of which were from the crotch region. At one point after an operation, he served himself a salad made of, let's just say, nuts in front of his cohorts and ate it all like it was nothing. On other occasions, he would sell the body parts online for others to partake in, selling multiple male appendages for about £700. Andrew said that sometimes Marius would even travel to get some of these goods. At some points, he would fly out to Germany and perform a marathon of operations in one day, something they treated like a party. One day in the UK, a man showed up at the apartment, inquiring about a purchase. Marius went to retrieve a jar from behind his sofa and handed it to the buyer. He looked at Andrew and told him, "Oh yes, this is someone's dong, from this nice 20-something from Belgium." Marius accepted very little money for it, getting an amount that he then spent on ordering a pizza. Given that he had operated on a good number of minors, he began to exploit this content as well. When a 16-year-old participant came over, he didn't perform the usual procedure on him. Instead, he electrocuted his male parts and uploaded the video for all to see. It goes without saying that this was a whole different type of illegal in comparison to the other videos. Marius didn't care though, even bragging to another that he had removed the male parts of and forced himself upon those as young as 8 years old. In the end, it wouldn't be any of Marius's own sloppy antics that would lead to his downfall. It would be the decision of one of his amputees, who decided to go to the police with what had happened to him. Regretting his decision, he realized that he should have gone to a psychiatrist, not a back-alley surgeon, about his problems. He said that Marius had manipulated and mesmerized him. But after having time to think, he said, "I realize I have trusted a wrong person, and Gustavsson is in fact a lunatic." He told the Devon and Cornwall police all about what had happened to him. This man had gone out to Marius's apartment. There he was on some drugs when Marius talked him into a procedure. He cut him with a scalpel, strapped him to the bed, and electrocuted him before removing his junk. Marius then pulled out a red-hot branding iron with the letters EM, eunuch maker, and pressed it into his skin. The victim came forward with proof, handing them a USB drive that contained over 5,000 WhatsApp messages between them, over 100 pictures, and even the videos. He felt guilty for making the police go through with watching all of that, but he commended them for it. The police, combing through everything, later said that this operation was to such a scale that the whole thing was at least 4 times the size of a regular murder investigation. They began to identify the EM crew by the multitude of videos on the website. After pinning down where they likely were, they made multiple raids at homes across London, Scotland, and South Wales, picking up as much of the crew as they could. When raiding Marius's apartment, they came to find his very own male member shoved into his dresser drawer 4 years after it had been removed. Over 10 men were soon in police custody. Now in 2021, the website was finally shut down. Damian Burns was charged with offenses related to removing Marius's wiener, and Nathan Arnold was similarly charged for what he had done to his chest. He also pled guilty to the theft of some local anesthetic from the hospital where he had worked. Jacob Crimmy Appleby got some of the same charges for freezing Marius's leg. They all admitted to causing grievous bodily harm with intent. Peter Waits also pleaded guilty to conspiracy to cause great bodily harm. Most of them claimed that they did these procedures on each other because they weren't available in the NHS. Marius Gustafsson was charged with conspiracy to cause great bodily harm with intent, 5 counts of causing great bodily harm, and charges related to the trade of the body parts and the uploading of the videos in the beginning. He was then charged with crimes related to the child material he had uploaded, both for making it and distributing it. He was accused, rightly, of being the ringleader behind the whole operation. Andrew came to be arrested as well, but the police came to realize that he hadn't taken part in any of the operations, leading to him getting off pretty easily. Andrew later said that the investigation was horrific and traumatized him, despite what he had caused so many others by being the administrator of the website. A much older man, 79-year-old Jeffrey Balcombe, who worked at a church, was also arrested in December of 2022. The footage of one of the operations was found on his phone, having been filmed in 2020. This was a video of him using tools to greatly expand the opening of a male thing. This was after he had already been arrested previously for admitting to producing indecent images of a child, some considered to be to the worst degree possible. He was also hit with charges relating to having 8 images of a person performing acts on a dead animal. Another charge was related to 182 other images that he had which portrayed all manner of human orifices being damaged in a way that was labeled grossly offensive and obscene. In the investigation, the police also found a whole lot of hard drugs in his home. Many of the other members of the group came to be arrested around the same time as well, such as 29-year-old Romanian man Ion Secure, 38-year-old Janice Atkin, 61-year-old David Carruthers and his 31-year-old husband Ashley Williams, and a 61-year-old German man named Stefan Scharf. When the trials came about, Marius Gustafsson's was definitely the central focus, given that he was the mastermind. He admitted to the charges against him. Given that the court in which the trial was held couldn't accommodate for wheelchairs, he mostly appeared over a video link. He was described as a lunatic, a butcher, and an arch manipulator. The judge, Mark Lucraft KC, said that he had been the mastermind of a gruesome, grisly, large-scale, and excessively dangerous enterprise. He took particular shock in the fact that Marius had presented his salad of nuts and ate them, and the fact that he kept many of the body parts as trophies for years after the fact. Marius's defense said that he, quote, only wanted to put a smile on people's faces by giving them a way to deal with their own body integrity disorder like he had done himself. The judge didn't buy it at all, saying that the whole thing was clearly more of a mix of Marius getting off on it and making a lot of money from it. The court played several different calls made to emergency services where Marius had calmly lied about how his victims had been injured by themselves and needed to be taken to the hospital. With the evidence, it was made clear to the court that the operations were mostly performed on vulnerable, often young participants and that the environments were far from sterile, saying that they were performed mainly for the sexual gratifications of those watching the videos. While it was clear that the victims had consented to these operations, the judge said, "The law in this country makes clear consent is not a defense to what took place. It may be some mitigation, but the performing of such medical procedures by the unqualified is eminently dangerous and many may face lifelong issues." He added, "All the procedures were carried out by the medically unqualified in environments far from sterile. They were conducted in amateurish and dangerous ways. In some instances, it is little more than human butchery. In some cases, medical equipment is used, in others, normal household implements were used. In some, equipment was used which is usually used to castrate livestock. Many videos were overtly sexual or had clear sexual overtones. Many caused great distress, and some resulted in the need for immediate emergency medical treatment. He ended by saying, "I am entirely satisfied the motivations of all involved was a mix of sexual gratifications as well as a sexual reward. In many of the film procedures, the consequence is severe blood loss and many are in clear and acute pain. One is heard on film saying that he does not want to die. To many of those looking at this case, the activity at the very least will appear to be disgusting and abhorrent." The judge said that Marius was clearly dangerous and that there was more than a significant chance that he would cause more serious harm and come to commit more crimes. A prosecution barrister, Caroline Carberry, KC, added, "We suggest that diagnosis, BID, if it exists, may explain why it is Mr. Gustafsson acted as he did to have his own body maimed and mutilated, but it does not explain why he made a lucrative business out of mutilating others." All throughout, Marius never showed any signs of remorse for causing the lifelong physical and mental damage to those he operated on. Andrew said that he believed that the group being convicted would only serve to drive other similar operations deeper underground. He said, "Marius never saw that there was anything wrong with what he was doing. In his view, people were consenting, and that kind of overrode other concerns. He genuinely believed he was helping them." Marius quickly came to plead guilty to the charges against him, like conspiracy to cause grievous bodily harm with intent, making and distributing indecent images of a child, admitting to making at least 2 videos, and possessing extreme pornography. Because of this plea, he didn't need to go through much more of a trial or provide any evidence of his own. Meanwhile, many of the other members of the group were getting hit with their own sentences. Damian Burns was sent to prison for 5 years. Jacob Crimby Appleby, Marius's young boyfriend, was sentenced to 3 years and 8 months in prison. Peter Waits himself was given 12 years. David Carruthers, who had kept his own frozen junk in his freezer, was given 11 years, while his husband, Ashley Williams, was given 4 years and 6 months. Ayan Shakur was jailed for 5 years and 8 months. Janice Atkin, a veterinarian, was sentenced to 12 years in prison for his part. Stefan Scharf himself was sentenced to 4.5 years in jail. Then Nathaniel Arnold was given a 2-year suspended sentence. Marius Gustafsson was finally handed down his own sentence as well, and it was more than he imagined. Given that nobody else had received more than 12 years, he thought he would likely get around that amount himself. One can only imagine his shock when he was given a sentence of life imprisonment with a minimum of 22 years. Given that he was 46 at the time of his sentencing, he will at least be in his late 60s by the time he gets out, if he ever does. Jeffrey Holcomb was banned from his church for life after it was found what he had been doing. He mainly claimed that his addictions to meth, heroin, and the occasional ketamine were to blame for what he had done. He has tried to appeal his case at least once, but has since admitted to his guilt and his involvement in the website. As of the making of this video, he hasn't been sentenced. The influence of the website, only having closed down a few years ago, still remains to this day. People on Reddit will still make the occasional thread asking what happened to the website and where to find its contents. Not only that, but it has motivated others to carry out similar surgeries on themselves. Neil Hopper, a 49-year-old surgeon from Cornwall, has carried out hundreds of amputation procedures throughout his career. In doing so, he developed quite an unhealthy interest in the idea. He frequented the Eunuch Maker website before its shutdown, buying various videos and adding to the group's income. Neil made the decision that he would chop off his own legs. After doing so, he made false claims to his insurance, saying that the operation was necessary due to sepsis, basically getting the whole thing paid for. He was arrested shortly after this crime came to light and fired from his job at the Royal Cornwall Hospitals. He is now being hit with a few charges himself, those being related to the insurance fraud. He will be in court himself sometime very soon. Once again, thank you for watching my video. This one was really weird and gross. If you found it interesting, please give it a like, it really helps me out in the algorithm, and feel free to subscribe if you want to see more content like this. These days I have my very own merch store. There you can get yourself some cool Dire Trip t-shirts and all sorts of other stuff too. Once again, thanks to Fume for sponsoring this video. Go to tryfume.com/diretrip or scan the QR code on screen to grab yours today. If you want, go ahead and follow me on social media. If anything were to ever happen to the channel, or if you just need to get a hold of me, that's the best way to do it. I really appreciate when people subscribe to my Patreon. There you can get videos early, ad-free, and uncensored. Channel memberships are up too, and you can get most of the same benefits there as well. Once again, this has been your host Kyle. Thank you, and good night.